Welcome back to the hottest podcast out there, the OP Podcast, where I highlight ordinary people overcoming extraordinary things. Now, I'm your host, Fono Vakalahi, and I want to welcome you all to the show today. This Saturday at midnight, I will be dropping a brand new episode with an interview that I had with a gentleman who has overcome one of life's biggest challenges, I would say. This is an experience of him losing a leg 5 years ago and being given a second chance at life. Right. And so super excited about that. Be looking forward to that podcast episode. You're not going to want to miss it. While I have you here today, I think it's important for all of my viewers to get to know who I am and get to learn from some of the experiences that I've had in my life. And that's the beauty of this podcast, is not only will you hear some of and get to know me and you hear some of my stories, but you're going to be drawing from experiences from multiple ordinary people overcoming extraordinary things. Today's message in today's podcast, I want to share with you the experience that I had of losing my father. Right? Of losing my father. So it's an experience that's very close to my heart, and it's an experience that's going to cause me to be very vulnerable with you. And that's my goal here, is to be authentic, to be different, to be vulnerable, to share you real life experiences and stories that will pierce the heart and really hit the message home. Okay. Excuse me. So I'm going to take a drink here, and then we'll get going with this podcast. Okay. What I want you to gain from this podcast is the understanding that the feeling of being alone is very, very challenging at times, especially when you're at a place where you don't really understand why you're feeling that way. And I'm going to share with you my story and share with you some of the things that I've learned through this experience. So buckle up and get ready for the ride. In 2007, I was currently living with my first cousin and his family. You know, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, well, I was literally with my first cousin. For those of you who know me personally and know me pretty closely, know that the experience of my mother having a massive stroke in 2001 when I was 11, and you know, some of the family situations that we were going through with 7 kids. I'm the second youngest of 7. And I think we currently had 5 still living in the home at the time. 6 still living in the home at the time. No, 5. Sorry, I'll get my numbers right. But 5 kids still living in the home at the time. 2 of them were already out. 1 was in college. 1 was on a mission. And there were some challenges that came for my father. And to be frank with you, it wasn't easy to raise 5 kids alone, and also have to take care and essentially, you know, be the main dependent in the home. But this is an experience, 2007, fast forward 6 years later, from 2001, from this stroke. 6 years later, I'm living with my cousin, and it's year number 3 that I've been with him. I was in the living room. It was summer of 2007, in the living room, getting ready, super excited. The next day, I was getting ready to go and watch an arena football game. You know, football, as you can tell, was my life for a certain point of time, and I was getting ready to watch a professional arena football team the following day. Super stoked, just relaxing in the living room. I get a call. Okay, I get a call, and it's my father. I get a call from my father, and I pick up the phone and I say hello. My father answers and says, "Fono, ako pukelahi po firmao ko ke California," which means, "Fono, I'm very sick, and I want you to come to California." Because my family was in California at the time for a family reunion. Originally, we're from Texas, but at the time they were in California. And I said, okay, you know, 16-year-old boy, you got to remember I'm 16 years old at the time. And so on my mind, I'm thinking, you know, my dad's never going to die. And my dad is always going to be there. And also girls and sports. if we're being honest, right? 16-year-old boy, hormones. But again, I was super excited about this game. I said, okay, I'll come. And my dad put some urgency in his wanting me to come visit him. But again, as a 16-year-old boy, I figured, yeah, tomorrow will be okay. I'll plan a ticket and I'll talk to my cousins, and we ended up getting a ticket. Right, I let him know that my dad's very sick and he really wants me to come to visit him. And so we ended up booking a ticket, booking a flight for the following night. Right, I ended up waiting, and I ended up going to that football game. That arena football game, and then I went the following day. There were some things with the flight arrangement that just made it easier and more convenient to go the following day, and not that very next day. So I ended up going to the arena football game, and enjoyed my time there. And the next day I got ready to head to California. Got on the flight. I got on the flight and headed over. It took me to Sacramento. I think there was a Sacramento airport that I landed at, that it took me to. Super excited. I was going to see all my cousins and family there. And I knew that my dad was in the hospital. My dad was in the hospital, and was super excited to see them and see him. The plane lands in Sacramento. I get out, go to baggage claim, pick up my bags. And, I start calling. I'm waiting around to call to let people know that I'm there, that I'm at the airport, ready to be picked up. 10 minutes passes, still not able to get a hold of anyone. I'm kind of getting frustrated that no one's answering their phone. 20-minute passes, still, I'm calling my brother, I'm calling my sister, I'm calling anyone that I knew that was there to come and pick me up. The heck is taking everyone so long, and why is no one answering their phone? It's very common for people in my family to ignore calls and focus on what they're doing at the present time. And then 45 minutes later passed. 45 minutes passed, and I get this thought and this suppression that, what if something bad happened? What if something bad happened? And an hour later, a car arrives, and it has my cousins in the car. 3 of my girl cousins, shout out to Lowena, Loma, and Belle. They ended up picking me up from the airport, and Belle walks out of the car, and I'm here on the side of the curb waiting to be picked up, and they're just bawling. They're just bawling, right? They're just bawling their eyes out, and I'm like, why are you crying? And of course, because of their emotion, it was hard for them to say. So we get in the car, we pack our bags, and we hit the road, and they're just bawling, right? And in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, like, I know why you're bawling, but I still don't believe it. I was just talking to my dad 2 days ago, and he was on the phone with me. And so they're bawling, and they let me know that my dad passed away. And in my mind, I'm like, no, like, that's not possible. And so the entire ride, right, it was an hour, a 45-minute drive from the airport to the hospital that my dad was laying in. And in the entire time, all I can think about is, stop crying. And it's not true, right? There's no way it's true. We arrive at the hospital, and I get out, and I'm walking out, and there's some of my cousins outside of the hospital, and you can tell that they're the emotions have gotten the best of them as well. And I make my way upstairs, I take the elevator, get up to the 2nd floor, and there was a hallway, right, that led to my dad's room. My dad was at the end of the hallway, And in this hallway, it was already filled with a lot of my family members. A lot of my family members who had already been there. And I walk into the room, and laying on the bed is my father. And from the look of his face, you can tell that he was going through quite some pain. And at that moment when I saw him laying there, I went over to him and just told him to wake up. I'm here. 16-year-old boy experiencing this. I walk over to the side of the bed. It's filled with family members, and I just kind of put my hand on the shoulder and I said, "Dad, I'm here. Wake up." And when he didn't respond, was finally that moment where I realized that he had passed away. That I missed my opportunity to say goodbye. And so that experience of going through that, and then all throughout his funeral, I still was kind of in disbelief. I was just kind of going through the motions. I felt like I was just watching things happen around me, but I wasn't really present. I wasn't really acknowledging what was going on. It was maybe a stage of denial that I went through because of that experience. I didn't accept it. I didn't accept it. And it took me a while to accept the fact that that my dad had passed, and I think I was coping with that pain by other means, and trying to fill my thoughts and my mind with other things than dealing with the fact that my father had passed away. Right. And that experience of finding other coping mechanisms is really one of the a learning point that I want to share with you all, of facing some of life's biggest challenges. As a 16-year-old boy, I didn't accept it, and I had to find other ways to cope with it. Right? I didn't want to have to go through the pain of accepting it. And so, like I said, we want to be 100% transparent. And something that you all, some of you may be able to relate to, right? As I turned to the use of marijuana. That was my coping mechanism at the time, to remove myself from the situation of that experience of losing my father, and doing everything possible that I can to not have to deal with that pain. And it wasn't until years and years later, years even into my marriage, that I finally realized, and I finally dealt with that. Finally dealt with the pain of losing my father. I finally got that closure that I needed in order to continue to move forward with my life and take advantage of some of the opportunities that were placed right in front of me. Right? But years, I mean, you're talking like 10 years of coping with this pain and not dealing with it. Many nights there were many nights of crying alone in my room because I just wanted to speak with my father. And then instead of talking to someone about it, I chose marijuana to lean to help get my mind off of that experience. But what I want to talk to you about, and the lesson that I want to talk to you about today, is when we go through major tragedies in our lives, such as losing a loved one, such as losing a leg, such as experiencing something that's different from your norm, the faster that we can talk to someone, the faster that we can cope with that pain, the faster we could acknowledge that pain and go through our grieving process of that failure or challenge or extraordinary thing in our life that we need to overcome. The faster that we can overcome that, the faster that we can start the road to recovery, and the faster that we can start to take advantage and not miss out on life's opportunities. And that's really what I want you to gain, because there's a lot of pain that comes from trying to cope, self-cope, and have self-therapy with some of life's biggest challenges. If you're going through something right now, if you're experiencing an extraordinary challenge in your life right now, and it's causing you to take yourself out, and you've experienced some of the feelings that I experienced while trying to cope with this pain, I want you to talk to somebody, right? I want you to talk to somebody, because there are many, many different outcomes that could have came from trying to trying to cope with that pain alone. Okay? Know that you don't have to do it alone. Know that you don't have to do it alone. And know that the faster that you overcome it, the better that you'll feel personally, and the more opportunities that you'll be able to see in this world, and the more beauty that you'll be able to experience in this world. And that's my challenge for you. If you are someone who feels like you're going through something right now that's just so unbearable that you're having thoughts to do things out of the ordinary and turn to an extraordinary outcome in order to cope with that pain, talk to someone. Do what you need to do to overcome it. And it starts with taking 100% responsibility. It starts with acknowledging it. It starts with talking about it. The brain is a beautiful thing, and the brain can store many things. And the beauty about the brain is, although it is intelligent and it's one of the most beautiful art creations of God, you have the ability to create what goes on in that brain. You have the ability to control what goes on in that brain. And part of it is speaking. Part of it is talking and telling someone about some of the pains you're going through. Okay, that's my challenge for you today. And thank you all for joining in. Thank you all for following along with the journey. Again, love you all. And hopefully you were able to gain something from that story today, to know that you're not alone, that you can overcome some of life's biggest challenges. And another story that I'm going to share with you all is some of the successes that has come through that experience, and some of the life beauties of life that I've been able to experience because of that experience. So thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of the OPP show, The Ordinary People Overcoming Extraordinary Things. And know that you can overcome anything, any of life's challenges. You're capable of doing it. Love you all, and have a good night.